everyone. It's Lena Banks, certified financial planning professional and small business coach based here in Austin, Texas. Welcome back to your financial therapy for the week. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. Before we get started, I do need to ask you if you've been enjoying the show, please like, subscribe, give us a review wherever you're listening or watching. I'd really appreciate that. So today we have back on the show, friend of the show, Andi Cobb.
Hello.
We're going to have an interesting discussion today. We've already been kind of bantering back and forth about it. I found this interesting kind of advice column article from the paper, and it's titled, "My son keeps doing endless free internships. How do I tell him it has to stop?" So he's asking a work coach who advises him on how to kind of broach this subject with his kid. And, I was saying, yeah, tell that kid to get a job that pays some money, right? So let me set it up with kind of this guy's letter. He says, "My graduate son, who has a very expensive degree," which that to me is red flag number one.
Yeah.
As well as a master's that he will be paying off for the rest of his life, has taken to doing free internship after free internship. He sometimes calls it work experience. I think he's now on his fourth or fifth. He's become convinced that this is the way he'll get a job because he's networking and getting to be in the offices of companies he respects. I see it as free slave labor. And that's actually what this dad says. I think he's a bit naive. I told him he needs to get a paying job ASAP. It's been nearly a year since he graduated. I don't want to be unsupportive, but he's honestly doing himself a disservice. How can I tell him to stop? So this dad is he's not writing
so
in.
Frustrated.
Yeah, exactly. Super frustrated. You can tell he is. And he is not writing in to be like, should I say anything?
He's already said everything.
Yeah, he's like, how do I tell him to stop doing this and to get a real job? So, yeah.
I mean, I feel for him, I
Right.
get it.
As a parent, you're like, okay, I feel it.
Yeah, you send your kid to college in order to, once they're finished, get a job.
Yeah.
And you spend all this money trying to help them or, just get them through that.
Yeah, and that's what I was feeling.
Going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're going to do
What's happening?
internships?
Okay.
For free?
Well, and the very first thing I thought was, this guy's living at his dad's house. There's just no way
absolutely.
that this guy is that concerned if he's not actively supporting this guy with a master's degree doing multiple internships,
Right.
If he was actually figuring out how to walk through this as a roommate or something like that with somebody else who's broke, that I think would be one thing. But, the gist is that the dad is supporting this lifestyle. Yeah. And, I get it. Because, you can have those perpetual people who are just, failure to launch. And they're going to be, living with their parents. And it's really sad, too, because he has that master's degree. He has the education. And a lot of student loan debt, which I know is just hampering a lot of people these days. So, yeah.
I feel like he is, it's a perfectly reasonable feeling for a parent. And I get the frustration. On the other hand, I come from a time when, it was fairly easy to get a job out of college. You're it's you get a job and you can move on with your life.
Right.
It's not that way.
So you're saying basically that he could be biding his time a little bit with these internships and legitimately setting himself up for a decent career down the road.
Yeah. And I think as they mentioned in the article that he just was engaging with new people and learning new skills and really taking that time to kind of dip his toe into the pool, the employment pool.
I get it.
And if you're not able to find a job, and look, I don't know if he's actually looking.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
is
the
he
other
actually
thing.
looking?
It did not actually say anything about and he turns in 5 resumes every day or something. Like,
Yeah.
and part of me is like, Lena, you've got to be a little more empathetic, because I haven't like actually had to, thank God, be in the job market the last several years. And I think it's probably really, really tough out there, even if you were looking and committed to finding something. It also doesn't tell us what industry he's in or anything like that. So you never know if it's something where AI or some other something has just kind of invaded the market.
Yep.
But that's kind of my point, I guess, with the whole master's degree and all of that. Like, I was recently having brunch with my niece and her significant other, and they were talking about how so many of their friends have tons and tons of debt from school.
Mm-hmm.
They luckily are like really in careers where they immediately left college and got work.
Yeah.
And I think, for the degrees that are not as practical, let's say, you can rack up a lot of debt and then end up with no discernible way to actually earn money to pay that back.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is like another cautionary tale about, not to pick on English majors, but like, I'm going to throw that out there. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to throw some of these things out there because, it's just like there are certain degrees where you really are heavily reliant on this type of internship work in order to actually prove yourself and then to actually make a living and a career out of it. I think even business, for the most part, which is where I landed, is like that as well, because you could do anything. But the problem is you can do anything. And, sometimes it's like, oh, gosh, you need that internship in order to prove yourself, in order to be in an environment where people get to know you and your work ethic and everything like that in order to actually get something stable. But I don't know. Like, part of me also is like, Dad, maybe you should have done a little more work.
That's what I'm thinking.
Earlier.
It's like, the better you set your kids up in terms of expectations and kind of giving them that focus that they need to say, okay, this is really how I can get to where I need to go and have decent job prospects.
Yeah.
I think those are important discussions.
Coaching your kids on, okay, so what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? There are, and, also coaching them on, maybe you don't have to get a master's degree or you don't have to even go to college necessarily. I know that's like very taboo still to this day.
I don't know.
But I mean, I think it's becoming more of like a relevant conversation because you never know what that college degree is going to bring you for sure. But you definitely need to kind of have an understanding of it. And a lot of times that's not something that like some school employee is going to be doing with you, a career coach maybe. But parents who have like the vested interest in making sure
get them out of your house.
Yes, exactly. That they have a viable career path. The other thing that I used to do a lot with clients is tell them if they had kids, they can take out loans. You can't take out a loan for your retirement. So the more important thing for you as a parent to be focused on is, yes, give your kids a boost, but you don't want to be so heavily invested in your kid during those formative years that you lose yourself.
Right. And, who's to say, God forbid, but something happens to your child and they're not there to help take care of you down the road, when you've spent all your money. You just never know. And so it's good to
think about yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But that also used to be easier advice to give when student loan debt wasn't such a huge thing. I mean, at this point, I was reading an Axios article, so I'll just throw out some stats. 52% of people, and this is like 5,900 college graduates surveyed late last year, November, December of last year, 52% of them say that they've delayed a life event because of student loans. So these are things like buying a house, getting married, purchasing a car, having kids, like all of that stuff kind of just is delayed because of student loan debt in particular.
Yeah, and that's really hard when you've got to put a pause on stuff that's really important too.
Right.
Because you are so in debt.
Right,
And
exactly.
so the kid that's in this situation where he's continues to do these internships.
4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Wow. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah,
You could do
right?
that many
Like,
times.
where are you going
At
to the
what
next
point?
place? Yeah. Like, where they're like, are you ever going to, like, want to have a job?
Yeah.
Or are you just, yeah. And I also wonder, what do these internships look like? Are they 40 hours a week or?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is it unrealistic to say, hey, do your internship, but part-time do something so you're earning some money as well. And maybe that will really in turn push the child to, pursue something much more,
Yeah.
readily.
Well, and another thing that they asked the dad in this little back and forth is, hey, are you expecting him? Are you setting the expectation that he's got to pay you rent, that he's got to, have bills? Because I think it's really easy to stay in the mode of, I'll just find another good internship and network. And, if you're not dealing with kind of the stress of actually
Life.
paying bills. Yeah. Like lifing, doing the adulting. And I mean, I feel for the guy. I really do. I think it is a tough job market, clearly. And like I said, we don't know what industry he's in, but I would imagine that whatever industry he's in, the networking really does help. It's helpful. But I don't know. I'm team dad on this one.
Well, and part of me just thinks, if this kid's had 5 internships and has been networking this whole time, what's the holdup?
Yeah.
Like,
I remember in
What is
business
it?
school in college, I had this like project, and you had to take your resume to a number of different companies where you would be interested in working and pitch yourself to them. That was the whole project. Well, there were companies that I pitched myself to that were like, well, I'm confused. Do you want a job?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's gotta have happened to this kid already, right? Like at some point,
I would guess.
You're working hard, you're interning. Shouldn't they be like, do you want to stay here and we'll actually pay you money?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So what's the holdup there? Like, what is preventing him from having at least a good lead?
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Smells fishy.
It
Smells
does.
fishy to me. But yeah, I feel for the dad. I definitely feel for the son as well. It is obviously very difficult. And given the amount of student loan debt, the fact that we do not have the forbearance and the kind of deferral options like were around during COVID, and everything has kind of started back up again. You got to pay those student loans again, and they don't go away if they're federal loans.
Yeah.
I think all of that is definitely putting everybody in this article between a rock and a hard place a little bit. I could see both sides, but definitely like rooting for Team Dad to like somehow make it happen. Incidentally, I keep saying that because the advice columnist, which, maybe you could Google and find this guy, but like the advice columnist was like, give him a break. Cut him some slack. I was so shocked by that, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit, because it's not like he's just out of college. He did a whole master's degree, too.
Yes.
So at that point, I'm thinking, like, you're locked into whatever it is the career is that you've chosen. It's time to, blank or get off the pot a little bit. Like, 4 or 5 internships in that same space, and you're networking. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is how much this kid, I keep calling him a kid, but this is probably young to mid 20s, right? Yeah, young adult. How much he's actually asking for the job, because sometimes it doesn't actually happen where somebody's going to say, "Oh, would you like to work here? Are you interested to work here?" Or, "Hey, we'd like to transition your internship into a paid position."
Yeah.
But gosh, you should be asking. And if you're not asking for the role, or like I said, sending in those resumes, doing whatever it is that you need to do to make it happen, maybe that's another kind of thing that this work coach could be.
Yeah. Well, and the work coach did mention that it would be good to have that conversation and say, "Hey, what do you think the next step should be?"
Yeah.
When you're networking with these people, like actively asking.
Yes.
And following up with them on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Things like that will help.
We're not just having fun here. Yes.
To move along. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this was just a quick episode that I think is probably happening out there a lot more than we think.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of, I think, concern about younger people getting jobs, being, viable adults with careers that make them money, that set them up for success in life. And this is clearly a smart kid. It's clearly a loving father. I don't think you would go through all of this or be even as frustrated as he seems to be if you weren't already being pretty supportive of your kid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this happening out there to lots of people doesn't make it any less tough for this family. And so I think it's kind of a sign of the times that unfortunately both things are true. It is definitely true that the job market is tough, that millennials in particular and younger are having a hard time. I guess maybe not millennials, because I'm the oldest millennial. But Gen Zers, maybe I'll say, are maybe having a tougher time getting a job than others. But there's also kind of a necessity here to move the ball forward.
Well, one thing that was brought up was that the kids these days, they don't have that social interaction as much. They're much more on their phone.
Yeah.
Or, so they may not have the typical work skills or that face-to-face time.
Yeah.
And may not know how to handle themselves as well in those situations.
Yeah.
So, maybe this is just part of that process.
Right. The slow grow.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It is really interesting because I mentioned my niece earlier. They often are driving later and doing that face-to-face social interaction less often. You're right. Even my kid, when he gets together with his friends, sometimes it's like, you guys are literally in the same room.
Get off the phone.
Get off the tablet or the phone. Yeah. What are y'all doing? You could talk to him right here. Oh, no, we're playing, whatever it is. In the same game on the screen. It's just bananas. So I get it. I think that there is some level of that happening as well. Like I said, I'm team dad. You got to figure out a way to kind of push that bird out of the nest and see what happens. And, I think if he got a job and it didn't work out, or he was really actively trying and doing some of the things that it would take to get a job, I think he would cut him some slack.
Probably, yeah, I would.
I feel like he's not seeing enough of that.
No progress?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, well, this was a relatively short episode, basically about kids and growing into adulthood and finding ways to work and earn a living on your own. I think this also brings up an interesting thing about what the value of our work actually is, because he talks about it being slave labor,
Yeah.
and the kid being naive about it. And I think that is like that is actually a valid point. Because, you know, a corporate entity or some sort of employer, they don't owe you anything unless they actually tell you they're going to pay you something. And I'm sure that there are many of them out there who ethically probably should be paying whoever it is doing that work, but they're not. And, you know, the longer that you accept that unpaid position, the longer
they'll keep taking
it. Exactly. So I think that also says a lot about just kind of the worth of our work and our need to revalue ourselves a little bit in the workforce, which is also something that is a learned skill. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. And I will be back next week with another episode.